In this video, we're going to take a look at the various two-dimensional shapes Max provides in its modeling toolset. Your ability to accurately create flat shapes will be essential as you strive to build realistic-looking 3D objects for your scenes. That'll become evident as you add more and more modeling techniques to your construction arsenal. Before we begin exploring our 2D tools, I'd like to get off on the right foot by starting to use the actual terminology or lingo that Max uses to differentiate between things that are 3D and things that are 2D. You see, up until now, I've been a little loose as to the words I've been using to describe what we've been creating. Now that we're jumping into the 2D arena, it's probably a good time to set the record straight. Max actually uses a different term for two-dimensional shapes than it does three-dimensional objects. In fact, I just did too. You see, Max officially refers to things that are 2D as shapes, and those 3D things, Max reserves the word object for those. So from here on out, that's the way I'll be putting things. I'll use the word shape to describe anything two-dimensional, and the word object when referring to something 3D. Another difference between objects and shapes is where they're found in the Create column in the Command panel. Objects are found under the Geometry tab, while shapes find themselves right next door under the Shapes tab. Let's open that up and see what we'll be working with. We're going to temporarily scoot past the Line command, being that that'll be the topic of our next video. Let's begin with the rectangle. Let's activate the front view, taking it full screen, and we'll now begin our work. We'll click on the Rectangle command, and then begin in the upper left-hand corner, holding our mouse down and drawing to the lower right. Now it feels like drawing a box, but without the dimension of height. If you look then at the settings, you have a length, a width, and then a corner radius. Now again, I'm right-clicking each time before letting go of the left mouse button, so I cancel the command. Let's delete that and draw a circle. For this, we'll start in the middle of the screen, hold your mouse down, and then simply drag away diagonally. Our options here are merely to control the radius. Again, I'll right-click to cancel out. For the ellipse, I'll start in the upper left-hand corner and then again draw down diagonally to the right. Here we can actually control the size of the ellipse, which is kind of like a smashed circle if you want to think about it that way. That size can be controlled until we let go of the left mouse. Then in the Command panel, you'll see our settings as being length, and then width. When using the Arc command, before we begin, I want you to notice that under the Creation method, you actually have a couple different ways that you can make an arc. We'll start with the default setting of end, end, middle. Now to begin, let's go to the middle of the screen and click, and then hold down on your mouse. Now drag straight across to the right about 3/4 of the way. Then let go of your mouse and then push up and down. When you're happy with the way things look, simply left-click. Now, under the Parameters section, you'll see our choices are changing the radius, the from amount, and the to amount. You'll also notice that there's an option called Pie Slice, which connects the lines together and makes for an old Pac-Man look. Let's delete that one and try the other method. Let's activate the other option, Center End End, which is frankly the one I find myself using most often. Again, we'll start in the middle of the screen. You'll hold the mouse down and then drag about 3/4 of the way to the right. This time when you let go, draw a circle on the screen. And you can see how this works. I'll go just a little bit short of completing the circle and I'll click. Again, we have the radius, the to amount, and the from. I'm getting a little hiccup with my video card, so hopefully that displays clearly enough for you. Now, the nice thing about using the Center End End option is it's very easy to draw concentric rings. So again, I'll start in the middle, and maybe do something a little bit smaller than the one previously. Let's go ahead and right-click to get out of the Arc command. Then Windows select everything and remove it from the screen. Next, we'll use the donut. Now the donut is like a shape inside a shape, and we'll see what you can do with something like that when we get to making things 3D. For now, we'll simply start in the middle. We'll draw. Here's the circle, the first part of our shape. Now let go and continue to pull back diagonally. There's the second. When you're happy with the look, go ahead and left-click. Now our settings here are the radius 1, which is the inside ring, and radius 2, which then controls the outside ring. Again, let's hit delete. The n-gon is a little strange as far as its name. Gon simply is another way of saying side, and n is being used to determine the number of sides. So a multi-sided flat shape, if you want to think about it that way. Let's again go to the middle of the screen, hold your mouse down, and then drag diagonally. Now our options here are for the radius, the number of sides. You also have a corner radius. You can see you can kind of round those off. And then at the bottom, I want you to notice there's an option called circular. We're going to be using this a little bit later on. Let's go ahead and clear that one off the screen. And we'll see what we can do with the star. Again, we'll start in the middle and drag to the side. When you're happy with the overall size, you want to let go and then push in. Click again when you're done. Now in the settings, we have a control for the radius 1, which is kind of like the length of the arms. Radius 2, which will be how small or fat it gets on the inside. You can also control the number of points. In addition to having a control called distortion. Try that. Kind of twist things to the side to create a starburst or maybe a saw blade. You'll also see that you can round off the corners both inside and out by adjusting the fillet radius, 1 and 2. So here's 1, which controls the outside, and radius 2, a little more control on the end. Kind of a neat shape we end up with there. Let's go ahead and delete that. Now we also have a text command. Let's click on the word text, and before clicking on the screen, let's go down to the bottom under text where it says max text, and for my example I'm going to simply type in 3ds Max. This will be the text that will actually display when I click on the screen. I'll now go to the middle of the view and simply left click. Now from here I can change the size of the text, maybe choose a different font. Your available font styles will no doubt differ from mine, so just experiment with whatever shows in the list. For mine, I'm going to choose Bimini Italic. Try saying that 3 times. If you look below the size, you have a kerning value. Moving that left to right will spread the letters out horizontally. For the leading value, we're going to need 2 lines of text. So I'll go back in the command panel, click behind the letter X, and then hit enter. This takes me down to the second line, and let's say that 3ds Max rocks. Okay, we'll press enter to lock that in, and now I can show you how the leading works. Changing the value, you see, will either spread out the lines of text or bring them closer together. There's also a couple word processing type controls under the font style. We can italicize our lettering, underline it, or justify it either to the middle, to the left, or space them equally across on both sides. I'll go back to the middle. The last shape style I'd like to show you is helix. Now, even though it is a 2-dimensional shape, it's most easily seen if we have all 4 views open. Let's go to the application button and reset the program. No reason to save, and when it says reset, you're going to want to say yes. Okay, back to the shapes column we go. Let's activate the top view, hit on helix, and now we'll draw one in the middle of the top view. Now as you click in the middle and pull away, it's going to feel kind of like a circle. Go ahead and make that maybe the size of, let's say, a nickel or a dime. You'll then let go, and then begin pushing up with your mouse. Take a look now in the front view as you can now determine the height. Now when you click, you're not done. Click and then pull back. This now controls the size of the helix at the top. Let's go ahead and click on the screen and we'll go over to our settings to see if we can't better control the shape of the shape. Why don't we hit Z to center it on the screen? And let's see what we can do over on the right. The radius 1 will control the size on the bottom of the coil. Radius number 2 controls the size of the top. The height obviously makes it go taller or shorter. And the number of turns will again provide a little bit more twisting detail into the helix. Now you also have a control called bias. Look what this does. It'll bring the majority of the helix either up toward the top, almost like kind of maybe a spool of yarn hanging down from the ceiling. Or you can take the bias settings so more of the helix is down toward the bottom. Here we'll make it look more like a cobra snake ready to strike. Max also gives you the ability to create multiple shapes. In other words, shapes that consist of more than one shape. For that, there's a button named Start New Shape that you need to be aware of. Let's return to the front view being full screen. We'll activate that and then hit Alt-W. Now I notice on the right hand side the helix command is still active, so I'll again return my mouse to the middle of the screen and then simply right click. Let's now draw a couple different rectangles on the screen. I'll activate the command. First one we're going to make pretty much the size of the window, and then we'll draw another one inside that. Now if you right click away to cancel the command, then deselect. And I'll hide the grid so you can more easily see that by hitting G. Take note that you have two different wireframe colors. And that pretty much tells you that you've created two separate shapes. In fact, if you go to the Select by Name list, by either clicking on the icon or simply hitting H, you'll notice that we have two separate entries in our list. And back in the view, if you click on one, only it selects, and vice versa by clicking on the other. There's a very specific reason that when you draw a shape on the screen, it creates a brand new shape. That's because of a button that's been on this whole time by the name of Start New Shape. You can find it directly above the rectangle button. So with that button active, every time you draw a new shape, it's creating a completely new shape. Let's delete what we have on the screen and see if we can't change things around. This time, before creating the first rectangle, I'll go ahead and turn that button off. Now we'll draw one rectangle, and then one directly inside that. Right-clicking and then deselecting this time reveals one wireframe color. And in fact, if you select either of the two rectangles, they both light up. So what you now have is one shape consisting of an inside rectangle and an outside rectangle. And as long as that Start New Shape button stays off, you can add to that original shape. Maybe I'll put a couple ellipses inside here. Again, I'll right-click to cancel the command and then click away to deselect. Notice again we have one wireframe color. Clicking on any part of it selects the entire shape. That'll give you an idea of what's available as far as the majority of the 2D shapes. They serve a very important purpose in the modeling process, so get to know them well. In our next video, we're going to concentrate specifically on the line command, as there's quite a bit to know there. Let's go check it out.